Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mxolisi Masango. I'm from VETS, and I'll be chairing the session. We are running a little bit behind in terms of our time. So this morning I learned a new term of how training through a presentation. But because it's Jean-Claude, I'm going to give you your full 30 minutes and then 5 minutes before, and then I'll indicate to you. So we will have now a presentation, one of the Siyaphumelela highlights sessions, where Jean-Claude will be telling us about their evaluation of a nudging campaign. Over to you, Jean-Claude.
Thank you, colleagues, and good afternoon, I think. Yeah, it's afternoon. It's my privilege to talk about a project or a intervention from the Siyaphumelela project. There are quite a number of them, and it's something that we implemented in 2018 and went through the full process of intervention and evaluation based on 2019 data. I've got one of my colleagues, Anya, Esther and Panda, helping me with the data requirements, but equally I could also say thank you to the faculty student advisors that made this project successful, but also the support at the executive and a management level. So it's about nudging, and you heard quite a bit of this from Free State, who implemented some form of nudging. So we decided on this and also to present this specific intervention because we feel it's something that you can actually implement at any institution. It is relatively easy and very low cost with relatively good outcomes as well, which we'll show you now. So what is nudging? Here's a definition, but I think from our side it is changing behavior of students, but also changing minds. So that is our focus and what we're trying to do. So it was, the nudging campaign was influenced by a visit at Austin Community College, a visit at Civitas, but also our own project, the FLY, Finish Line is Yours, as well as some leading indicators from the PAR framework. So the Finish Line is Yours is basically a marketing campaign, but it's sort of morphed into something much more than just that. And it's about helping students choosing the right programs, asking for help, using resources, seeking advice, as well as managing time. So this nudging campaign fits into this first one, that choosing your programs. In terms of your credit load, but also the modules, the pathway from year 1 to year 3, 2 and 3, and so on. So as a summary, it was done in 2 phases and then the evaluation at the end. So the first phase is the credit loaded registration. I'll tell you the methodology that we followed there, and it's sort of almost step by step, and if you want more information, I'm happy to share with you. Phase 2 was the second semester credit fail ratio, so based on their first semester results, and then the monitoring and evaluation. So the first phase methodology is basically going onto our website, into the yearbooks, and looking at what is the credit requirement for a specific program. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on the length of that specific program, and putting that into the old-fashioned Excel spreadsheet. Right. So we focused on, so that was getting the data to understand what that credit load was. Then we did a full download from our PeopleSoft system of the programs that students registered for at the beginning of the year. We looked at the total credits that they had and then merged the 2 Excel spreadsheets with each other, and then developed as a calculated field another column, the credit percentage difference, and then indicated the students that had credit low risk, which means that they took too few credits in relation to what was required, and then high credit risk. So those were our indicators, and then we sent messages to those students. Okay, so focus was on the 3 and 4 year program, specifically in the non-vet medical sciences faculties, and only on new registered students. So first time entering first year students, because it's the first time that they've been there and they would not have enough information. We also sent out a survey, and 102 students responded on that survey. And we then, at the 21st of February, did an evaluation to see, after the nudge that we sent to the students, which of these students actually reduced their credit load or took more credits and onto the optimal level. So here's an example of a message, a nudge that we sent to the students in 2018. You can see that the word optimum is there. We were still young and stupid in this specific project. Students don't know what optimal means. So we did it again this year, and we chose different wording, and we also gave them some resources. We felt after this that, after the 2018, that students need to have agency and also come to the party. It's not only we're sending you to some place, but go online, check your credit load, make sure that you've got the sufficient credit load. If you need to speak to somebody, here are the links, and so on. All right, so that's the first phase. The second phase, and here we're looking at the first semester academic performance, and we have a cluster analysis project we do anyway, and this information is sent to the faculty student advisors. So we look at the variables, the credit fail ratio, their average performance in the first semester, and the number of modules that they enrolled and failed. And we've got 3 risk areas. It's at risk, borderline, and not at risk. And we provide then to the faculty student advisors this information, again, as a very simple Excel tool with some dashboards on there and with drill functions. And the FSAs can use that to contact the students. So we piggybacked on this to get the information. And then we looked at and used specifically the credit fail ratio for this purpose to identify the likely to progress status, so the likely to progress to the second year. And these are our 5 groups that we identified, and you can see the ranges that we use there to identify, so it's also relatively simple. And we then pop that into the Excel sheet, as I say, so the FSAs have both the credit fail ratio or the cluster analysis risk groups, but also the nudging group that students are in. And through this, the FSAs know what is the cluster risk group, but also which students we have targeted with nudges, right? The idea is FSAs contact the students, and through the nudging campaign, we contact the students. So it's a bottom-up, top-down, whatever type approach. All right. So these are the numbers of students, first-time entering, first-year students, 2018 that we targeted for each of these specific nudge categories, and we sent to all of them. So the blue-green group, we sent the message, "We are proud of you." Isn't that great? So it was a very motivational. We had a survey, well, not a survey, but we used Qualtrics at the back end, so students could give their comments. These students were really, really happy to get this message, and sort of it was a positive feedback to us that students appreciate nudges, and even from the very good performing students as well. So for the other students, the yellow, the orange, and the red students, we sent out the subject line, "A helping hand." And here we, as a call of action, to consult the faculty student advisors and to talk to them in terms of their academic goals. So it's also very simple, to the point. Okay, now I'm going to go into the results. This is now the evaluation aspect of it. And there we look at the low credit load at 12 February, and the audit date is 21 February. So at this point in time, did you make changes? And we see for the 3-year program and the 4-year program in the 36%, 35, 36% students that actually took their low credit load to the optimal level according to that specific program they were enrolled for. All right. Then we did an evaluation. So the likely to progress, this categories, nudge group categories, were the outcome variables. So we wanted to see if we said you need to make changes to your credit load, what was your risk category or nudging category at the end of the first semester? And we see that the students for the low credit load, it's the red group, is that they tend to also fall into the fail category, the credit fail category. So they take fewer credits than that is required, and they also fail them. So it's almost a double whammy for them. Okay, and that is for 3 and 4 year programs. Then for the high credit load, there weren't many students with a high credit load in the 3 year programs, mostly in the 4 year programs. So our success in terms of changing or reducing your credit load to optimal level for 3 year programs was only 12% and 43% for the 4 year programs. And again, the nudge group status or category as the outcome variable, we see there that students who took too many credits are more likely to be in the orange or red group and to discontinue. Slight differences, but there are some differences there. Just as a side note is that we did a case study on a single student. There we could have done more students from a specific faculty taking modules from service modules from other faculties. These are high impact modules, and the student requires 120 credits, took 178 credits, and needless to say, failed almost all of the high impact modules. So only the modules within their own faculty were passed. So it is really something that we have driven through our data analytics committee to make changes to the credit load, to the ability of students to take more credits than they actually can. And we've made a couple of inroads there. So, and that's where the deputy deans and the management play a huge role in the success of this. So just as a sort of a summary for the 2018 credit risk is that at the end, we could get about 35% students to increase their credit load, and the credit high, we could get about 40% of students to reduce to the optimal load. Okay, so just as a summary there. Then in terms of for the second, so here we're looking at the cluster analysis, and then we took the nudge group there, and our outcome variables there is progression to the second year, because that's what we want to measure on this, as well as did students discontinue their studies. So what we see here is that, and it's almost supposed to be a no-brainer, is that as you fail more credits, your ability to progress to the following year reduces because there are certain criteria set by the faculties in their yearbooks. You need to pass at least 70%. So this is just a visual, a confirmation of what we see there, so that as you dip down into the credit or likely to progress status, you are more likely to either discontinue or go back into the first academic year. The next one, we wanted to see if students consulted with the faculty student advisors. If you remember that our call to action was for those students to go to the faculty student advisors. And we had the good job, it's just my terminology, for the students that were in the blue and the green group. And the need support is the other students in the red, the orange, and some of them in the yellow. And the need support, those are the students that we're targeting. And this is about changing the behavior and changing the minds of students. And as you can see, there is a marginal difference in terms of students consulting with the faculty student advisor. So there is a lot of work to be done here. We are doing the same thing again this semester, end of this semester, and hopefully we've got better results to show the next time. So there is work that students take up this and go to the faculty student advisors. It might also mean that we didn't pick up, students might have gone to the FSAs but indicated something else on there. So we need to check our data records as well. So it could be a number of things. Then we did a cross-tabulation between the 3 risk groups that we have, consulted and not consulted, and then we had a binary outcome, either discontinue or progression, and then looked at a significance test on this to see if there are any significant differences in terms of having a specific status versus going to an advisor or not. And you can either focus on the discontinuation column or on the progression. And we see if I focus on the progression for yellow, if students consulted FSAs, 100% in this case, students progressed for that specific section of students, and those who did not consult, 94%. For the orange group, consulted FSAs, 82% progressed, and this is now either first or second academic year. And those who did not consult, 77%. For the red, consulted 55% and no consultation, 32%. So we see a bit of a change in terms of if students consult FSAs, they're more likely, as a function of what we have here, to progress to the second year. But our Kramer's V, which is a type of significance testing, was only significant for the orange group, okay, and marginally off for the yellow group. So there is a bit of randomness in terms of what we see here, and we need to do further analysis, actually test the 2019 group and to see if we can get better results. Okay, so we also ran a survey, as I said, to these specific red, orange, and yellow groups of students, and we got 195 surveys back to see if students actually consulted and what was some of their feedback. So 63% of the students consulted after the nudge. This is now of this 195 students. 70% attended 1 or 2 sessions at least. 83% said it's very useful to extremely useful. The sessions only 10 to 15 and 16 to 30 minutes, so it's short sessions. It could be referral sessions, but it is short, and we need to look at that as well. If these type of sessions, in terms of duration, is that adequate to actually support students to be successful or not? And then we see there 47% were referred, and of the 37%, so that's the rest of the 195 who did not consult, 75% went to somebody else than the faculty student advisor. So we see peers and mentors and so on play a huge role in students' lives as well. So the recommendations of the project as a whole is that it needs to be part, nudging as an intervention needs to be part of an existing intervention, and also data analytics strategy. I said that it's part of our FLY project, but it's also part of what the faculty student advisors do. So on its own, it would probably be even less effective. Leading indicators, we had the PAR framework, Predictive Analytics Reporting Framework, doing an analysis for us on the credits as well as the credit fail ratio to show us what the impact of that is in terms of progression rates, but also in terms of graduation. So you need to have those leading indicators to tell you what to look at and what are your indicators to identify and to set those specific thresholds to identify or to flag students. We see tone of nudges positive to the point, maybe not so to the point as I did, so maybe with a bit of a curve or something. I'm a bit straightforward, so I have a bit of a nuanced FSA type of appeal, not a data analytics person, write the nudges. Determine the outcome and outcome variables, so know what you want to evaluate it against, and then determine your key stakeholders. This 2018 registration data, we said they have to go to the faculty admin. The faculty admin didn't know the students were going to come to them. So needless to say, I got a bit of hate mail, but for 2019, they knew that the students are coming, so I think that's why it was a bit more successful. Okay. Then we also had enabling factors already in place. So we, as I said, we already had a link with the PAR framework doing data analytics for us. We also had our support service departments waiting for the students and also guiding them. The FSAs were in place. And they also had access to the cluster analysis tool. They used that for a number of years, and we could just slot in the cluster analysis, the nudging campaign data in there. And then we also have our data analytics committee where we can communicate this, the information as well as the cluster analysis and so on at regular intervals to management, deputy deans, where we could filter that down. And then also nudging is relatively inexpensive, so there's no excuse of not using it. It's about setting your criteria, and I'll talk about the, do I have the recommendations here? No, so it's inexpensive, and it's about setting the communication, a communication plan and a data plan for it to be effective. Okay, so in conclusion, nudging is not going to solve everything in higher education. It's not going to give us a silver bullet. It's going to be an intervention, and it's something that we think is useful. And we have, to some extent, promising findings in terms of going forward, specifically towards the credit load. As we've made changes within setting pathways in specific faculties now already, NAS and Natural and Agricultural Sciences and Economic and Management Sciences, and helping students to create pathways, this becomes a template for other faculties as well. And we might not need to do nudging at the registration period in a year or two's time. So then we do nudging for something else. So be adaptive in that way as well. Okay, and then we see that we need to support students more in creating agency for themselves in order to go to faculty student advisors. I think the presentation this morning by Dr. Sorrell in terms of destigmatizing going to faculty student advisors, counseling and those, using that as a resource, that communication I think should be stronger, and I think that should also help students to regard help seeking not as a limitation but as actually as a resource to go forward. That brings me to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Jean-Claude, for that interesting insights in terms of what you are doing. Definitely, there's quite a lot that we are going to be able to learn, that we have learned, and that we can be able to take to our institutions. Is there any one pressing question? I see Diane, and then I'll only take, also there's two. I'm only going to allow two questions, and then, so it's Diane here, and then Francois at the back.
For 170 credits.
Thank you. Can I just say I don't know to get to the food? So the first one is the faculty student advisors is communicated during orientation. We've got them as a key session for students, so they meet their faculty student advisors. So we think, we hope, that they know who they are in person, but also there's regular communication through the FLY campaign. The finish line is yours. So I think through these various communication channels, they should know. And why are they able to register for more credits? Students have this ability to look for loopholes. So I think that is the bottom line. We're trying to make and close the gaps. But there are students that get through the cracks and register for more credits than they are allowed to.
Jean-Claude, I want to thank you very much for very impressive work. I just wanted to ask, in our context, one of the challenges we foresee with nudging is everybody emails students, and they use it as a strategy. You know, student academic services, faculties, everybody is emailing the students. And one of our concerns is that students will start to tune out of university emails because effectively I'll just talk about the University of the Free State, effectively we're spamming them because there's not coordinated communication. How have you approached that problem? Have you approached that problem?
Okay, so fortunate and unfortunately, we are the only ones spamming the students at the moment. But you've actually hit the nail in your own comment there, is that you need a coordinated communication plan. And we've got that for surveys to some extent, where we don't over-survey students. It doesn't work that effectively all the time, so we get students or surveys, and I think it's about having a register of nudges going out at what specific time, and that plan needs to be mapped, and that we only get the most important messages at the right time to the right students.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause.